Dear students, today I am going to take you through the topic translation. I will do so in two parts in an attempt to capture the quintessence of the vast subject. In translation 2, we will follow the evolution of translation from its nascent stage to its development as a discipline and its movement from the hands of the translators to machines. In this video, I will be defining the term translation and introduce you to some key concepts and also mention a few theorists and their contribution that has enriched the discipline over time. And finally, we will see whether translation is an art or a science and also casually look at whether translation is possible or not. These are some of the keywords that we'll come across in this video. The definition of the term, terms like source language, target language, dynamic and formal equivalence, foreignization, and domestication. Now, going to defining the term, let us understand that the word translation comes from the Latin word translatio. The first part of the word is trans and it means to cross. The second part, latio, means to carry or to bring. Translation therefore means to carry across. Translation as a discipline hence is concerned with carrying across or transferring a communication, text, context from one culture to another. Communication happens through language and we know that language is culture specific and is unique to its soil. So, translation is a complex process or activity which has to engage with the native flavor of a language in which is embedded culture, that is belief systems, history, so on and so forth. Generally, we know that reading broadens our perspective. Reading a translated work widens and enriches our understanding of people beyond our limited space of limited borders of space and time. A few examples of translations from Indian languages like Sanskrit and Bengali. Kalidasa's Abhignana Shakuntalam is the first Sanskrit work to be translated into English. Tagore's Gitanjali is also a widely translated work. Cervantes' Don Quixote is a Spanish work of art of the 16th century which is even popular now. George Steiner, professor of English and comparative literature, who was a polyglot and polymath, maintained that any model of communication it is at the same time a model of translation. When a play is performed on stage, what takes place is a translation of the script. That is why he said that any model of communication is at the same time the model of translation. The theoretician makes it clear that translation is an activity involving perception and interpretation, and a good translator must be equipped with these ideas. So, in a sense, all of us are translators because we perceive something as it is conveyed and we try to interpret it from our own understanding. So, that is why he says that any model of communication is at the same time a model of translation. Now let's look at Anida's definition of translation. Translating consists in producing in the receptor language the closest natural equivalent to the message of the source language, first in meaning and secondly in style. So here source language is the language in which the text is to be translated. Receptor language is the target language. I repeat, source language is the language or the text which lends itself for translation. Let me define a source language. Source language is the language from which a text is going to be translated to a target language. Suppose we have an English text which has to be translated in Tamil. The English text is the source language text and the target language would be Hindi or Tamil or whatever language in which we want to translate. Going over to Susan Basnett's definition, she says what is generally understood as translation involves a rendering of a source language text into a target language so that the surface meaning of the two will be approximately similar. So when translation happens, according to Susan, there has to be the meaning which is approximately similar, or the surface meaning should be approximately similar with the source language. then the structures of the SL will be preserved so closely as possible, but not so closely that the TL structures will be seriously distorted. So she says that the structures of the source language can be only closely translated into the target language. It should not be translated to the extent that target language structure is distorted. Now, going over to Dryden, we know that Dryden is an English poet, a critic, and a translator, and he's known for his translation of Aeneid. He talks about three types of translation as metaphrase, paraphrase, and imitation. Metaphrase, according to him, is a word for word translation or a line for line rendering. Paraphrase is a sense for sense translation. Imitation allows the translator to change the word and sense. So in this type of translation, imitation, the translator give creative inputs, but paraphrase is just a sense for sense translation. We read the paraphrases of Shakespeare's play, and metaphrase is a word for word or line for line rendering. Now going over to J.C. Catford's contribution to translation. Catford was a linguist from Scotland, and he founded the School of Applied Linguistics at the University of Edinburgh. Now he talks about full translation and partial translation, keeping in mind the extent to which a translation takes place. Then he also talks about total translation and restricted translation, keeping in mind the level at which it occurs, translation happens. So in a full translation, the entire text, every part of the source language text is replaced by the target language. In partial translation, some part of the source language text is left untranslated and is retained. It may be retained for two reasons. One, because it cannot be translated because of untranslatability at the level of language or at the level of culture, and also some texts are left untranslated to retain the flavor of the source language, culture, or language. In total translation, every part of the text is replayed by target language at the level of grammar, at the level of lexis, and all that. In restricted translation, translation occurs only at one level, either at phonological level, lexical level, or at the grammatical level. Then Susan Bassnett, a translation theorist, and she's known for her seminal work, Translation Studies, which became a rule book for those interested in the area of translation. According to her, translation is not merely a linguistic activity. It is but a semiotic and a cultural act. So what does she mean to say when she says it is a semiotic act? She says that language consists of signs and symbols which carry meaning, and this also, the signs and symbols of a culture, of a language, has to be translated as well, apart from the language and content. And it's also a cultural act. She means to say that the ideas, the customs, social behavior of a particular group of people with a language gets translated to the language of the other people. Now, Lawrence Venuti, an American translation theorist who's known for his work, The Translator's Invisibility, A History of Translation, talks of two translation strategies. One is domestication and foreignization. According to him, domestication is an ethnocentric reduction of the foreign language to the target language cultural values. He means to say that in order to minimize the strangeness of the foreign text in the target language, the translator will try to dilute it, or the translator will try to make it be more familiar with the target audience readers. Now, foreignization is ethno-deviant. Foreignization is a strategy to preserve the strangeness of the foreign culture. So he is not going to dilute it. He is going to preserve the uniqueness of the source language text by retaining some phrases or words in the target language so as to establish a kind of uniqueness to the original text, or to carry over the uniqueness of the original language. Over to Eugene Nida. He was also a linguist like Catford, and he was one of the founders of translation studies. He talks about formal equivalence and dynamic equivalence. In formal equivalence, he says the translator has to give importance to the form and content of the original message. In dynamic equivalence, the translation has to be a closest equivalent to the source language message. Now, features of the formal equivalence. One could be fidelity to form. The translator may be very careful to be very faithful to the lexical and grammatical structures. It can also be called as a literal translation. Apart from giving importance to literal aspect, the translator also gives importance to the message. And in a formal equivalence kind of translation, there will be accuracy and correctness. Going over to a dynamic equivalence, this is primarily directed to equivalence of response rather than the equivalence of form. So the translator here is not going to be faithful to the form, but he is going to be faithful to the response that the source language readers had. The same kind of response the readers of the translated works will have. So he is going to focus on the equivalence of response rather than the equivalence of form. Now, Roman Jakobson, one of the greatest linguists of the 20th century, he also talks of three kinds of translation, just like Dryden talks about three types of translation: metaphrase, paraphrase, and imitation. Roman Jakobson talks about intralingual translation, is transposition within a language, could be the paraphrase. Interlingual translation is called the translation proper. Then intersemiotic translation may be defined as the transposition from one system to another. For example, a story into a movie, story into a drama, all that. What are the qualifications required of a translator? So we know that a translator, in general terms, we know that a translation should also be like a creator, artist, imaginative. But is imagination alone sufficient? No. Let's see what Nida says about the qualifications of a translator. According to Nida, a translator should have a satisfactory knowledge of the source language to understand the obvious context of the message, but also the subtleties of meaning and the significant emotive values of the word. So, translator should have an immense or in-depth knowledge of the emotive values of the word, subtleties of meaning, and have a satisfactory knowledge of the source language. And also he should have a thorough acquaintance with the subject matter. That is what he said concerned, and it is very indispensable. Then why is it required that he knows the culture? Because literature of a country is an offshoot of the culture of the country. So giving importance to nuances of meaning of the word is very, very important in order to get a grasp of the source language experience. So a mastery of the two languages seems to be a very good criteria for a translator. Translating the literature of a nation means placing the source culture in the receptor culture. So a translator must have resourcefulness, imagination, and sensitivity to language. Now going over to the question or the conflict between what is important, whether it's the form or the content, it depends on the text that is going to be translated. So in a method where form is given importance, there you see the emphasis is on the form. When you talk about emphasis on the form, it can be possible only when two languages have similar structures. In the latter, communication of ideas becomes important. In a content-based translation, communication of ideas gains preeminence. Now going over to Peter Newmark's approaches to translation, he again distinguishes between communicative translation and semantic translation. Now communicative translation is reader-centered, it is simple, and it is easy reading. Like our instructions given on when you buy an article, instructions given there is very communicative. Then semantic translation is author-centered. It stresses on the nuances of meaning and it is loyal to the original text. Now to the question of whether translation is an art or a science, let's take Nida's opinion. Nida says translation is a rigorous description and there is analysis in translation, whether it's grammatic or semantic. Then there's going to be a transference of message. There should be restructuring sometimes, and also and therefore these features make it a scientific procedure. Now, in his treatise, The Art of Translation, published in 1957, Theodore Severy says that the translator sometimes will have to make his own choice which is the essence of art. When it comes about choice of words, translator has some freedom. So he compares the similarities between art and translation, where a mistake in a painting could also be equivalent to a mistake in the meaning of a phrase. Looking at both the points from the point of science and from the point of literature, we know that familiarity with the subject matter and linguistic knowledge makes it a science. Resourcefulness, imagination, and intuition makes translation an art. So a good translator must be ambidextrous so that all the problems of the translation can be handled, whether it is scientific or artistic. Savory acknowledges that besides linguistic knowledge and literary capacity, a high degree of familiarity with the subject matter is essential. So that solves the problem whether it's a science or an art. Now moving on to the next question, is translation possible or impossible? This question can be tackled by translators, and it can go on as a separate topic, but we will limit ourselves to the concept of translatability and untranslatability. Now, untranslatability is a property of a text for which there is no equivalence in the target language, whether it is lexical or syntactical. Translatability is a property of a text that can be translated, that can be easily translated. Now, Catford maintains that there are two types of untranslatability. One is at the level of language, it is called linguistic untranslatability, and the other untranslatability is cultural untranslatability, which is about the cultural uniqueness of the source language. Now, to conclude, the modern theorists say that the notion of untranslatability can be overlooked because they believe that all languages can express a concept in another language in one way or the other. It depends on the translator. With these words, we can conclude that translation is a possible art. Thank you, dear students, for listening to me. We will meet in the next video on translation part 2. Bye and take care.